Alright, guys, so I just want to give you my perspective on Filipino politics and Duterte from an American point of view. Basically, a outside the box looking in type of deal. So, first off, when it comes to Filipino culture, I'm actually an admirer of large part of their culture. They are very warm and welcoming people usually. This is a very good thing. I believe that much of the world, in fact, could learn from Filipino hospitality. But when it comes to the political game, I'm not too much of an admirer of some of the way Filipinos, at least on the ones around my age that I've met, and judging what I've seen outside looking in, I'm not really a big fan of the way they approach their politics. They seem to have this idea that government is responsible for taking care of the people. And I'm not personally, I don't agree with that. That goes against everything I believe. It actually goes against the very foundation of America, which is a little ironic because a lot of Filipinos really admire America a lot, but yet they seem to lack a little bit of what made America America. They just hear freedom and they think, "Oh, America, freedom." But it's actually it's more complicated than that. I mean, America was built on a very classical liberal idea that government should be limited as much as possible. It was based on the idea that a government that governs least governs best, not the other way around. And I don't think a lot of people today and really understand that, but especially foreigners. I don't think they can understand that unless they have studied classical liberalism or modern day libertarianism. And then, of course, there's Duterte. A lot of people see him as this. Well, he's very much a controversial uh, figure, to say the least. But some people look at him as this, you know, terrible dictator that's going to destroy their republic or the democracy and such. And some people see him as this like Lord and Savior, God Emperor like figure, and but I guess to be a little more realistic about Duterte, I want to go over just a few opinions I have about him, and just kind of go over a few of the facts, or at least some of the things I've seen and read. Duterte, when he was first elected, I think he was viewed a lot like the Filipino Trump, much like Bolsonaro is viewed as the Brazilian Trump. And I kind of see what they're coming from because they're all these are very outspoken people, blunt, strong leader type of people. And I think a lot of nations are hungry for that. Something not just strong and someone willing to fight, but someone who does not play the establishment's game. And this is, I don't blame people. This is a good thing that people should want change, but we should be wise about the change that we are seeking. Um, you got a lot of people out there that admire Trump. They think he is the God Emperor, can do no wrong, savior of America. It's not true. Trump did a lot of good things, and he was definitely better than some of our recent presidents, but he wasn't ideal. He wasn't this ideal president, this ideal man. I remember I met one guy, he said that we should just make Trump king. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? That's just, no, we should definitely not. No, nobody should be king, ever. But anyway, looking at Duterte's policies and some of the things he's done or threatened to do, it's a mixed bag. And overall, it's a worrisome bag, at least for me, in my opinion. I think his sense of, I guess, patriotism, if you want to call it, some people call it nationalism, but whatever. I think it's good that he wants to put, or at least claims he wants to put Filipinos first. I mean, that's good. I mean, I believe any leader of any nation should put their people first. You can't help others unless you help yourself. I'm a firm believer in that. So I feel like that applies to individuals and also nations. But his approach to this is what worries me. He seems to take well, I mean, he even calls himself a socialist, and what a lot of people don't seem to understand, and this is on the educational system, and I blame our elders as well for this because they did not teach us this. They should have. They should have been more forthcoming about history of socialism. There's a lot of people, and you would think in Asia they would know this, but North Korea is a socialist country. In fact, I think the name is called the North Korea Socialist Workers' Party. That's what Kim Jong Un is a part of. That's what they fought for. They fought for socialism. In fact, if you just type in North Korea socialism into like a Google search or something, you'll see that North Korea like executes people for speaking out against socialism. Like you would think people in Asia would know this, but due to a failed educational system that a lot of countries seem to have, they do not understand fully what socialism is, and I blame government above this for this because they don't want you to look at socialism as a bad thing because socialism is state control. Socialism as its core means the state controls the means of production, and that's what the state wants. So of course they're not going to paint a negative picture of socialism in the educational system run by the state. This is why I'm not an advocate of public schooling. I'm a big advocate for homeschooling, private schooling, maybe charter schools at most. But that's as far as like fully public schools, I'm not a fan. But getting back to Duterte, this guy claims he's a socialist, which just should set off all the red flags right there. But he has also, if I'm not mistaken, threatened to nationalize certain companies and businesses in the Philippines if they didn't do what he wanted or they were doing something shady. And his approach was just nationalize them. I'm just like, dude, that's fascism. Like literally the merging of corporations and government is literally in the doctrine of fascism. Read the doctrine of fascism. It's literally only 10 pages. It's a Google search away. You'll see it in there. But anyway, I do, however, like his approach to communist rebels. I think, yeah, these people should be dealt with. I mean, yeah, it's terrible to say, but when you have organized rebels and militias with the intent of doing innocent people harm, sometimes good people have to do bad things and wipe them out. It's just a sad reality. And nobody likes it. It's not fun to hear. It's not fun to talk about. It's not love, peace, and harmony like a lot of people think the world is, but the world is a dark place, guys. One approach I think the Philippines could actually take that I think that they could actually set the gold standard for, because they are, like I said, a culture of warm, welcoming people who are very family oriented and generally just want to enjoy their lives with their family and their friends and such. They basically have a good moral conduct, usually, at least. That's basically what I'm getting at. I think if the Philippines were to educate themselves on things like gun rights and self-defense, I think they could be a gold standard for a culture that is embedded in good moral values and is still able to possess firearms and defend themselves and form organized militias to defend themselves against rebels or outside invaders. This may sound a little strange at first, but try to bear with me for a second. I mean, a culture that is bred in good moral values they're not just gonna turn violent randomly just because you give a bunch of people guns. That's not how life works. If people really want to kill somebody, they're gonna find a way, even if they have to do it with their bare hands. That's just the reality. Reality is people kill people. Guns don't kill people. Most of the time, guns actually deter violence. That's the reality. There's a reason why in America you're far less likely to have your home broken into, especially when someone's there, than you are in the UK. In the UK, they have banned guns and even banned knives of certain length and whatnot. And you have people have their homes breaking into all the time in the UK because criminals know they're defenseless. Criminals do not abide by gun control or any other kind of laws. So what makes you think banning guns is going to do any good? All it does is take guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens who want to just enjoy their life or be left alone or just be with their family and not be disturbed or attacked. So again, I think the Philippines could really set a gold standard for this. I think if they would just educate themselves on this issue better, from a more liberty minded standpoint versus a state relied upon the state mentality, I think they would find themselves a lot more safer and a lot more self reliant. But I don't think either the corrupt liberals in the nation or especially Duterte, I'm not convinced he would want that. I think most governments don't want that because it threatens their regime. And if a government can monopolize violence and make you depend on them, they don't want you to rely on yourself. They want you to depend on them. It's an ego elitist mentality most politicians have. Human nature has not changed over centuries. When you look at history, politicians or monarchs or whoever have always wanted power. They've always wanted to control people's lives because they think they know what's best for you, and even though they don't even know you exist. Politicians aren't any different most of the time. There's a few, but most of the time, no. I'm also deeply concerned with Duterte's foreign relations. I know he's not happy with the United States, and the United States is far from perfect, especially some of the most recent regimes we've had. Trump was a little bit better than Bush and Clinton and Obama, but I mean, like I said earlier, he wasn't ideal, at least not in my perspective. But anyway, I'm a little uncomfortable with him trying to draw close ties to China, the communist China, which is also a socialist ideology, by the way. Definitely go look that up. I probably should make a separate video about that. But anyway, this makes me very uncomfortable. And I think it made a lot of Filipinos uncomfortable when they hear, oh, break ties with U.S. and let's form ties with China. One, that sets off a lot of red flags, and it should. And two, I mean, Filipinos and Americans have always been good friends for decades. I mean, yeah, our beginning of our relationship was not good, but we've developed much stronger ties since then, which is a good thing. And so for him to want to break off ties with the West entirely it's pretty alarming to me personally. And he wants to build ties with Russia. I'm not a fan of Russia, but I don't think Russia's as bad as China or North Korea and such. I think if he wanted to build allies in the East, I think South Korea and Japan and Taiwan would be much better allies. These are people who still have some sense of, freedom-ish cultures. So for him to ignore them and want to build ties with China and the Communist Party it disturbs me. I think it should disturb a lot of people, but that's just me. Remember, this is an outside looking in video. Wasn't there a law that he passed, the anti-terrorism law, think it resembles a lot of the Patriot Act that was passed by George Bush, if I'm not mistaken. I remember I was reading into it when it was first passed. It's very disturbing. I think the government could come into your, if they suspected you of terrorism, they can come into your house without a warrant and arrest you for a period of time without cause. Well, without a warrant at least. What they call it a cause, but I think it's a terrible idea. I mean, I remember I think he actually tried to compare this to what a lot of countries have, especially us, and I'm pretty sure he's referring to the Patriot Act. Dude, that's not a good that's not a good thing. Most Americans see the Patriot Act as a terrible legislation, which it is. It's one of the worst ever written in modern American history. So for you to use that as your defense for passing this legislation is a joke. I mean, it's a joke. Terrorism doesn't give you the right to violate human rights. And by the way, hasn't he said he doesn't care about human rights? A lot of people take that into the context. Oh, he's just talking about the drug dealers and the communists. I'm like, no, dude. If he views you as a threat, that means you too. He doesn't care about your rights either. If he deems you as a threat, which government can decide anything's a threat if you give them that kind of power. People don't. People tend to think, oh, that won't happen to me. Look at history, bro. If you don't learn from history, it's doomed to repeat itself. But anyway, I know he's brought a lot of investments into the country, and that's good. A nation leader should always encourage investment, investments from either foreigners and especially from its citizens. Any leadership in a country should encourage investing, in whether invest in themselves as individuals or into the nation as a whole, whichever they choose to do. That is a good thing, and if it attracts foreign investments, that's also a good thing. I'm a little worried that if I'm not mistaken, I think he's inviting actually foreign investors. I'm not sure. I might be mistaken. If that's the case, I hope he wouldn't allow foreigners to come in and monopolize Filipino businesses or corporations. You don't want a bunch of foreigners owning everything in your country. It's not a good thing. That puts you at their mercy. Filipinos should strive to have Filipino companies and corporations and such. I think that's just. I think any nation should strive for that, because it makes for good competition. You don't want foreigners coming into every nation and monopolizing everything. That's not. That's not. That's not good. Look, that's what China's trying to do, and it's a terrible. Look what they're doing to many countries in Africa. It's a terrible idea. You don't want that. As far as the Liberal Party goes, they're kind of a joke. I mean, they're just kind of the same corrupt establishment. They kind of remind me of Democrats, honestly, which, their policies are kind of the same. Yeah, they just suck. In fact, I think a lot of the Liberal Party in the Philippines has a lot of connections to mostly Democrats, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess that kind of speaks for itself, don't it? I mean, the Liberal Party are basically like typical political party. I mean, no different than Democrats and Republicans in this sense. They claim that they're going to govern one way and then turn around and govern a different way and come up with all these excuses and try to spin that to make you keep voting for them in the next election. And the cycle continues on. It never really changes. Politicians realize that most people have a short-term memory when it comes to politics, so they can usually get away with it. That's on us. That's on the people. That's on the voters. You can't get mad at them. They're just playing the game, and you just suck because you can't seem to remember. I'm not talking about you there in the Philippines who are maybe watching this. I'm just talking about anybody who's voting and goes through that situation. We go through it in America all the time, and yeah, we still have this two-party monopoly, which is sucks. I think Filipinos should really um, educate themselves on economics. Like I said, they have the hospitality down. I mean, they are very warm, welcoming people. But I think what they lack is education of maybe history or economics, definitely. I think if Filipinos were willing to educate themselves on a more self reliant, self governing mentality and push for small government and understand what capitalism really is. Well, I think a lot of people think capitalism they associate it with corporatism or cronyism, which is not true. Capitalism at its core really is just having property rights, having the right to exchange voluntary goods and services and things like that. That's really all capitalism is. It's really not even about profit. It's really just about self ownership of yourself, your goods, your services, and your private property rights. That's capitalism at its core. But what capitalism has done, because of those rights and self ownership, has brought more prosperity into the world than any other economic system in history. But what we're seeing now, like most of the world, we have mixed economies, we have corporatism and socialism mixed together with sprinkled on capitalism. Really, the internet has kept capitalism alive because it's made people, it's allowed people to make independent content online and advertise their small businesses online and really help these small businesses stay afloat and not fall too much under the thumb of corporatism and government intervention, which is socialism. And I think that if Filipinos understood this concept, I think that they could really be a prosperous and golden nation of the world. I really do. I really think that. They have the morals down. They have the hospitality down. I think if they just made these tweaks to their culture and mentality a little bit, I think there's a lot of potential to be had there. It's a beautiful place. I mean, a lot of people go to retire in the Philippines. A lot of people take vacations there. I mean, you got you have the location on your side. You have the moral values on your side. You just need the education on your side. And I think with this, there's a lot of potential that's unrealized and untapped. You just gotta get politicians and government out of your way. Yeah, and you gotta be brave. You can't be afraid of liberty. Liberty, it comes with a trade off. You can either be more reliant on government and be more tied down and have more of your paycheck stripped away for the sake of government safety nets and government safety, or you can be more self-reliant, and with that comes more risk. But since you guys are a very tight group and very family oriented, imagine if you're keeping like 90% of your paycheck or more, how much more you could do for each other versus having the government do it for you. I think you should really keep this in mind because, again, as I've said, you have the moral ideas on your side. You have a beautiful country on your side. You just gotta take the risk, take the jump. I really encourage this. I think every nation should, but I think the Philippines actually have a lot of potential that's just not realized there. Um, but yeah, that's my outside looking in. I could be wrong about a few things, and if I am, just tell me. You don't need to fight about it. This is just my opinion. I mean, I'm just a guy over here in America looking at you guys from my perspective. I could be completely wrong, or I could not be wrong. You let me know in the comment section. But if this video interests you guys, like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll definitely try to make more content like this. But with that being said, guys, that's it.